Sophiralou and welcome to my channel. Hello guys and welcome to my Arteza Art Supply review. Arteza were lovely enough to send me a bunch of supplies for me to try out from their water brushes and some water-based materials for me to create a piece with and give you guys my personal thoughts. Please remember that this video is not sponsored. I'd let you know if it was. They just sent me a bunch of supplies for me to give me my own personal thoughts. Links to all the products are down below in the description, so make sure to check them out if you are interested and see if this is your sort of thing. So the first things they sent me was these water brushes, which are refillable paintbrushes that you can use, and I'm quite familiar with these because I've used similar products in the past. Some water-based fine liners, which to me seemed very similar to another brand that I've used in the past. I don't really use water-based fine liners as much anymore, especially with watercolours, but considering I was using watercolour type materials anyway, I thought it'd be super fun to try out. These brush pens were very interesting as well. They remind me a lot of like the Pentel brush pen in the way that their bristles, instead of it being one contained unit and fibre, they're kind of like brush tips in a way. And they definitely were an interesting thing to use as well. They were very colourful, very bright, very vibrant, and they were quite easy to control. And then the last thing that they sent me, which is in this box here, is a bunch of their Woodless watercolour pencils. Now I've never used watercolour pencils before, so this was an experience to me. I've got very limited experience with all of these art supplies, so it was interesting for someone who doesn't have that much experience for me to try these out, and this is all the stuff that they gave me. So first thing I did was I colour swatched everything. The reason why I wanted to colour swatch everything that I had is I wanted to check the range of colours that we've got, obviously to try out the product first and to see how it would react with water. Since they sent me a bunch of water-based supplies, it only made sense for me to see how they would look with water. Now, bear in mind, I haven't been using watercolour for that long, so some of my techniques are slightly varied, but I was very surprised with the water brush pens. I absolutely loved these. Now, for those who do know, I have a cat, and my cat likes to chew some of my supplies. Look at her, she's coming up to inspect now. But these barrels are made from hard plastic, which means that even if my cat was to have a good chew on them, she wasn't going to break them, and I was really happy about that because I have lost some very good water brushes in the past to my cat. And for anyone saying, oh, you shouldn't leave your art supplies around, trust me, when you go up to go and get a cup of tea and you come back and your cat's chewing on an art supply, you don't exactly think to put everything away when you're just popping off your table for a bit. So I was really happy with this. The water brushes felt absolutely excellent. I really loved the fact that they had this push section for you to be able to control how much water came out, and the water came out nice and controlled, and it didn't have any accidents with this, which I was extremely grateful for. The pens for me, now I'm not hugely experienced with brush tip pens. I've had a few different experiences with them, and I was actually really did enjoy using these. Now if you're expecting to get a flat colour when you're colouring with this, because it is water based, you're not going to get a complete flat layout. So by having like the watercolour to do a small gradient with it, it was really nice for me to be able to try out a different way of using these supplies. So you can see that I colour swatched all the wood pencils, and my experience with these was at first I couldn't get them to quite work the way I wanted. I was still getting, like when I did a circle, I was still getting the edge of the circle, and it took a bit of practice for me to realise that I didn't have to press down quite as hard for me to be able to get a nice smooth layer. If I wanted to use the water, it looked much nicer when I used less layers. So after that I swatched all my fine liners and tried them with watercolours as well. Now when you put the fine liner down it was very vibrant, and then when you used the watercolour you lost a lot of the colour, so it was probably, looking at it for me, I was going to use these fine liners at the end of my product after everything was dry, just so I could get some nice colourful lines. So this is the piece that I ended up doing. The lines that I have here are just made with standard pencil. They're not made with any watercolour pens in mind at all, just so that I had something to work on, mainly because I work better with lines, and I knew that by putting a water-based line down that my lines were going to run, they were going to bleed, so the easiest way for me to work with them would be for me to create a foundation and then build up. The first thing I did essentially to create, because I was quite sensitive of putting the colour straight down, this is actually the third piece that I tried doing, because I very quickly realised that if I was going to use these supplies that I wasn't going to use cold press paper. Cold press paper, if you don't know, has a textured feel to it, and I wasn't able to lay the colour down smoothly as much as I wanted to even after using watercolours, so I switched to hot press, and then after using the hot press paper I very quickly learned what would work and what wouldn't. So this is the kind of like a final product after everything I tried out. So what I did was, to create the lighter effect, is I coloured onto a separate piece of paper, picked up the colour with my water brush, and then put the colour down onto the piece of paper. For any areas I wanted darker, I just went straight in with the liners, just so that I wouldn't have any differentiation in colour. It's one of those, with these supplies, for me personally, it was a learning experience because I haven't used supplies like this before. It was interesting for me to try out something that I hadn't necessarily done before. So the question is, what were my personal thoughts on it? My personal thoughts are that, one, the water brushes were definitely my favourite. I ended up using the brush pens a lot more than any other piece of equipment, mainly because it was easy for me to lay colour down with these, and I felt much more comfortable after trying it out a few times for me to know what I was going to do. I tried to use as little of the dark colours as possible, and ended up with quite a bright, vibrant piece. And one of the things that I cannot fault is the colours. The colours were just so bright, they were so wonderful. When I used the water brush, they did lose a little bit of their vibrancy, but that's the kind of effect that I was going for, especially with the see-through glass pot. It really helped with those sections. For darker layers, I just built up on top by using I draw another piece of paper and pick up the pigment and then apply that on top. I ended up using the pencil crayons a lot afterwards. These Woodless watercolour pencils, though after a bit of trial and error, I really ended up loving them, much more than I thought, and I'm definitely going to end up using these pieces again. And while I first thought them, I was like, I don't know whether or not these are for me. After a few tries, I really enjoyed the effect that they brought. It's almost like being able to use watercolour without a watercolour palette, and I think that's what makes water-based pens so much fun. In the end, I went over all my lines with the fine liners. I didn't end up using these fine liners like watercolours. I do suggest that if you are going to use these fine liners like fine liners, use them after you've used your paint, your markers or anything like that, otherwise your lines are going to bleed. Just with the nature of water-based fine liners, that is just how they react with certain materials. But overall, I'm really happy with these products. I definitely do recommend them if you are after a really lovely based water supply. If you're quite tentative about using watercolours and you haven't used watercolours before, this might be a segue for you to go into it. As I said, all the product links are down below, and here's a few final looks over my piece. Overall, as I said, I am very, very happy with the product. I'm definitely going to be using these a lot more to get more confident in them, since I'm still on the learning curve. I still do need to try out these products more, and for me to really get my hooks into them. As with any art supply, you're not going to be perfect with it straight away, so it's always good to try out different things. I hope you guys have enjoyed this product review. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've tried these supplies before and what you thought of them. If you have any products that you would like me to try out to give my personal thoughts on it, please let me know. I'm always happy to try out supplies because I want to expand my horizons with my supplies and try out lots of different things. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Maybe like, comment, subscribe, but as always folks, stay creative.